Want to know how to leverage culture to build a successful business? Then Butternomics is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Brandon Butler, founder and CEO of Butter ATL. And on Butternomics, we go deep with today's most influential entrepreneurs, innovators, and business leaders to peel back the layers on how they use culture as a driving force in their business. Butternomics will give you what you need to take your game to the next level. Listen to Butternomics on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Essie Cupp, and I've spent my career interviewing people about politics, presidential elections, and some really tough breaking news. But now I need a break, and I think you do too. So on my new podcast, Off the Cup, I'll still be interviewing people, usually famous and most likely my friends, but about life. You know, the stuff that consumes us when we're not consumed by politics. So come join me every Wednesday for some conversational self-care. Listen to Off the Cup on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.
Hey, I'm Jacqueline Thomas, the host of a brand new Black Effect original series, Black Lit, the podcast for diving deep into the rich world of Black literature. Black Lit is for the page turners, for those who listen to audiobooks while running errands or at the end of a busy day. From thought-provoking novels to powerful poetry, we'll explore the stories that shape our culture. Listen to Black Lit on the Black Effect Podcast Network, iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, it's Jay. Most people know me as a podcast host, entrepreneur, and author. But did you know that I've been writing a newsletter every single week for the last 4 years? It's called Weekly Wisdom. In each newsletter, I answer a question from one of my 700,000 readers. I give my best insights and advice, helping my readers find purposeful and spiritual solutions to their everyday problems. My goal here isn't to tell you how to live your life, but to guide you in the direction of your best possible future. If you'd like to get my newsletter sent to your inbox every Thursday, just go to jayshettynewsletter.com to sign up now. That's jayshettynewsletter.com. A brand new newsletter comes out every week. I can't wait for you to read it. A lot of us have to recognize that change is something that has to come from within. They have to feel like this new life will be good for them, but they have to know it in their language, with their reasons. They have to commit to that change. Is someone telling you they're going to change? Or is someone showing you the signs that they're ready to commit to change?
The #1 health and wellness podcast.
Jay Shetty.
Jay Shetty.
The one, the only Jay Shetty.
Hey everyone, welcome back to On Purpose. Thank you for trusting me with your time and energy. I don't take it for granted, and I'm so grateful that you've chosen to be with me here today. It's been an incredible few weeks. We've had everyone from Shawn Mendes to Andrew Huberman on the podcast, Nicole LaPera, incredible therapist and thinker, and so many more amazing guests yet to come. I also hope you've been taking a look at my solo podcast, because there have been some workshops that have really resonated with you recently. But I'm guessing you're here today because there's someone in your life that you wish would change. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's someone in your professional environment at work. Maybe it's a sibling. Either way, there's someone in your life that you're wishing, waiting, and wanting for to change. And maybe you've tried already to help them change. Maybe you've pushed them to change. Maybe you even made the mistake of forcing them to change. And you're sitting there right now going, Jay, I just don't know if they're ever going to change. Can people change? That's our question for today. That's what you're thinking about. And that's what I'm going to guide you through over the next 30 minutes or so, to recognize, what is change? What does it look like? Is it possible? If you want to know if that person will ever change, this episode's for you. If you're struggling with someone because they're not changing, this episode's for you. And if you're someone who's just trying to figure it out, this episode is for you. Now, the first thing I want to do is take a very factual look at change. When we look at change in society, change in community, change individually, studies show that forming a habit can take anywhere from 18 to 254 days, with an average of 66 days to form a habit. But that's not the kind of change you're talking about. When we're asking this question, can people really change? We're talking about something far more core or fundamental. We're talking about values. We're talking about attitudes, behaviors, mindsets, right? Maybe you want someone to change the way they appreciate you. Maybe you want someone to change the way they think about care. Maybe you want someone to change the way they talk to you, communicate with you. Maybe you want to change the way someone behaves with you. Adapting to change, studies show, can take around 90 days. And seeing significant change in society can take 30 years or more. Notice the difference. Changing a habit average 66 days, adapting to a change 90 days, seeing norms set into society 30 years. So we've got to look at the person and we've got to empathize and be compassionate and realize, are they trying to change a habit? Are they adapting to a change? Or really is it that we're hoping that they change a norm in their life? Now, I want to give you an answer in short that, of course, people can change, but different parts of them take longer to change. And there are far more aspects that are unchangeable than we believe. And when I say unchangeable, I don't mean that it's impossible or will never happen. I mean that the waiting time may be so long that it may feel like forever. So one interesting study talks about this idea of how it's actually quite hard over time for people to change core personality traits. So people can change their personality, but it's hard to change core personality traits. Like if someone's an extrovert or an introvert, it's hard to change. Someone's not just going to shift from one to the other. If someone's a homebody or wants to travel the world, that's not going to change overnight. If someone is more likely to be open than closed, i.e. emotionally available, it's not easy for someone who's emotionally disconnected or unavailable to suddenly become available overnight. These are far more core personality traits that are much more difficult to see changes in. Now, one study I looked at talked about how hurtful behaviors such as lying, cheating, dismissing, or controlling, and this is from Psych Central, they say are often habits that turn into harmful behavior patterns. And research from 2020 explains personality may be shaped by an interaction between multiple sources, from genes to events and social relationships, rather than only one source. The study goes on to say that personality development isn't linear and change isn't either. So what's really interesting about that is even when people change, we think of change as linear. We think that if someone changes, everything changes. When actually what happens in reality is that even if someone changes, chances are they're going to oscillate back and forth to their former self. So you're going to constantly ask the question, wait a minute, I thought you changed. Wait a minute, I thought you understood. Wait a minute, I thought you got the message. And the truth is, it's more likely that someone's going to oscillate back and forth until they get there. So behavior can be learned and unlearned, but the amount of time it can take, the levels it can go to in order for that to happen can be very, very hard to go through. Now, here's the reality I want to get through to you. You can't change anyone. You can only change yourself. You can't force someone to change. You can't push someone to change. You can't beg someone to change. They will change when they want to change. They will change when they feel a need to change. They will change when they're ready for change. When it impacts them so badly that they're not changing, that's when they'll choose to change. Changing someone else is not within your control, and trying to find ways to do it can be exhausting. So, what I'd rather give you is signs that someone is likely to change. Because often what we do is we keep asking the question, can people change? And really it's the wrong question, because people can change. But is the person that you're with likely to change? Is the person that you're talking about likely to change? These are the signs that they're likely to change. And that's a healthier, better, smarter question to ask, because what you're really asking when you ask, can people change, is my person going to change? Are they going to be different? And there are certain signs that point you in the right direction. The first one is they own up and take accountability and are self-aware about not only what change is required, but why the change is required. Sometimes someone will say to you, I know I need to change. I know it isn't right. And we get so happy and elated that they acknowledged it, that we take that acknowledgement as accountability. There's a difference. There is a difference between acknowledgement and accountability. Acknowledgement is recognizing something. Accountability is reconciling something. Let me say that again. Acknowledgement is recognizing something. Accountability is reconciling something. When you're accountable, you actually have the ability to articulate what the problem is, why it exists, and how you're going to show up in the future. You're taking accountability for your actions, your behaviors, and you're able to see the connection between how you act and how it affects the other person. I promise you that most people that you're talking to are simply acknowledging the problem. They're not actually taking accountability, but because we don't know the difference, we assume they're the same thing. Now, assuming they're the same thing isn't a great idea, because if you assume that they're the same thing, then you think someone's taken accountability. But no, accountability means I know how my actions affected you. I know why my actions affected you. I can articulate it, and I know how my actions affect you, and I know which actions I need to change. And by the way, I know why I need to change them. I know why I am that way. Notice the difference between acknowledgement and accountability. Now, once someone's taken accountability, they have to want to change. They have to have the proper motivation to change. Because just because someone can articulate and take accountability doesn't mean that they feel the need to change. They have to feel that change is necessary. If you look at most humans, we only change when we believe something's necessary, right? If we think something's going to end, we change. If we think something new is going to start, we change, right? We change when it happens. Most people want to get promoted before they change their performance, not realizing that you get a promotion because you changed your performance. There's a reason why the famous phrase of you don't know what you've got until it's gone, because we wait till we lose something to know we should have changed. That's how human behavior and the human mind works, is we constantly feel that until something's necessary, until something is required of me, I won't do it. Until I feel the pressure to, I won't do it. What often we do is we try and put that pressure on that person to change. We try and force them to change. But we don't realize that if they change for us, but they don't know why they're changing, they may actually feel regret. I like to think about this through a scenario. If someone changes for you, then that means that they didn't really go through the process within themselves. They haven't really looked at the value, and therefore they may actually be depressed about that change. They may be down about that change. They may not wish that change ever happened to them. I'll give you an example. Radhi always told me that all she wanted to do was live close to her family. And I wanted that for her because I love her family and I know how much she loves them. And then when I got the opportunity, of course, to move across the world, to change my career, change my life, and do what I get to do today, and Radhi and I were already married, and it was a hard change for Radhi. And I said to Radhi that I didn't want her to move for me. I wanted her to do it because she saw value in it and she could find it for herself. Now, she had to adapt to that change. It was hard for her. And I was trying my best to help her with that change. I didn't want her to change, and I didn't want her to feel pressure to change, because I realized that unless something comes from within, unless something comes from that person, they are never really going to fully commit to it. And that's what's really interesting. Sometimes we're trying to get people to change on the surface. We're trying to get people to change a behavior for us. And we don't realize that when they do that, not only does it not stick, when it doesn't come from within, it doesn't feel like it's meaningful to them. So they can't truly get behind that change long term. And they may even feel like it's your fault. They may feel like it's a mistake. They may feel like it was the worst decision they made in the long term. And a lot of us have to recognize that change is something that has to come from within. They have to feel like this new life will be good for them, but they have to know it in their language, with their reasons. They have to commit to that change. Is someone telling you they're going to change? Or is someone showing you the signs that they're ready to commit to change? Okay, I am so excited about this because we've got the first ever merch drop for On Purpose. It's finally here. And for World Mental Health Day, we're doing an exclusive limited edition drop with all the proceeds going to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. So now you can wear your On Purpose merch, listen to the podcast, and know that you too are having an impact. I want to thank you so much in advance. I can't wait to see all of your pictures wearing the merch. There's sweatshirts, a hat, t-shirts. Check it out on our website, jshettyshop.com. That's jshettyshop.com. And remember, 100% of the proceeds go to NAMI.
Want to know how to leverage culture to build a successful business? Then Butternomics is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Brandon Butler, founder and CEO of Butter ATL. Over my career, I've built and helped run multiple seven-figure businesses that leverage culture and built successful brands. Now I want to share what I've learned with you. And on Butternomics, we go deep with today's most influential entrepreneurs, innovators, and business leaders to peel back the layers on how they use culture as the driving force in their business. On every episode, we get the inside scoop on how these leaders tap into culture to build something amazing. From exclusive interviews to business breakdowns, we'll explore the journey of turning passion for culture into business. Whether you're just getting started or an established business owner, Butternomics will give you what you need to take your game to the next level. This is Butternomics. Listen to Butternomics on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What's up, y'all? This is Questlove, and at QLS, I get to hang out with my friends, Sugar Steve, Laia, Fontigolo, Unpaid Bill, and we, at Questlove Supreme like to nerd out and do deep dives with musicians and actors and politicians and journalists.
We give you the stories behind all your favorite artists and creatives that you have never heard. I'm talking about stories behind their life journeys and their works of art.
I love QLS because of the QLS Team Supreme. They're like a second family to me.
If you're a fan of deep diving into music, everything, almanacking your musical history, and learning things about hip-hop artists and things you never thought, then you're a lot like me. But you're also a fan of Questlove Supreme.
One of the things I love the most about this show is that we get to learn from the masters. I look at being on this show as my graduate program in music.
Listen to Questlove Supreme on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Suprema!
Hey, I'm Gianna Prudenti.
And I'm Janae Jackson-Gadsden. We're the hosts of Let's Talk Offline, a new podcast from LinkedIn News and iHeart Podcasts.
When you're just starting out in your career, you have a lot of questions, like how do I speak up when I'm feeling overwhelmed?
Or, can I negotiate a higher salary if this is my first real job? Girl, yes.
Each week, we answer your unfiltered work questions.
Think of us as your work besties you can turn to for advice.
And if we don't know the answer, we bring in experts who do, like resume specialist Morgan Sanner.
The only difference between the person who doesn't get the job and the person who gets the job is usually who applies.
Yeah, I think a lot about that quote. What is it? Like you miss 100% of the shots you never take?
Yeah, rejection is scary, but it's better than you rejecting yourself.
Together, we'll share what it really takes to thrive in the early years of your career.
Without sacrificing your sanity or sleep.
Listen to Let's Talk Offline on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
A lot of the time, people will say the right thing because they're people pleasers. They don't want to lose you. They want to say all the right things to hold on to you, but they haven't committed to that change. right? They haven't put steps into place. They haven't had the awkward, uncomfortable conversations. They haven't stepped up and done the things that are hard for them. Is someone committing to change? And often what we do is we just keep going mad. We keep getting angry at them saying, I wish you would change. You keep telling me you're going to change, but you don't change. But they're not committing to that action. One of the things I've been saying to a lot of people I know recently is don't expect change to happen in one therapy session. What we're often hoping is that lifetimes of work will become clear to someone through a couple of sessions of therapy. What I mean by that is our wiring is so deep. There are values that we've held on to because of our childhood that don't just disappear because someone else presents a better idea. I'll give an example, a silly example. If you've always put your cereal in the bowl before your milk, by the way, that's the normal way, no judgment, right? And you start dating someone who puts milk in before the cereal, you don't just switch to doing that, right? Now, that's a really silly example. It's a really easy change. It doesn't make a difference. But if you think about it, there are things you think about first. Sometimes some of you think about money before you think about people because that's how you were raised. You're not going to change that overnight because you start dating someone who thinks about people before money, even if it makes logical sense to that person, right? People don't just change their values, their core belief systems overnight just because someone else's sounds good, right? If someone believes, I've been watching, and I'm sure many of you have seen it, Monsters. Now, no matter what you believe, just taking this idea of even if someone's parents have done harm to them, have done them wrong, if they love their parents and feel positively towards them because they feel somehow, you know, whether it was they felt guilty, they felt shameful, that they had to feel that way, that's how they were raised, they're not suddenly just going to see the light because you made them aware of a few things. Actually, it's very hard for people to admit that their parents have flaws, that there are challenges, that there are, you know, difficulties there. And you see that in the Menendez brothers who struggle to recognize certain challenges. Now, whatever happened in that scenario, you get the point I'm making, that it's not easy to acknowledge things that are so counterintuitive to the way you've been raised, right? If your parents were savers, not spenders, you're not suddenly going to realize that actually spending money meaningfully is better for you. It takes a lot of healing. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of unearthing. And so one therapy session or a couple of therapy sessions or a month of therapy or coaching or whatever it may be won't make the change. Now, by the way, you're all chipping away, but I think when we want someone to change, we're just hoping, wishing, wanting, waiting that they're just going to change. Now, signs that someone's changing is they start to course correct. When they say something to you that they realize is their old voice, they call it out. They say, wait a minute, I just realized that was my old voice speaking. They start to recognize how the smallest actions are a representation of their old self. And really, that's what it is. You have to think about it as a transformation from an old to new self, right? And if someone's transforming from their old to new self, they will go between their old and new self often. It's not like you transition once. It's almost like saying, I'm going to quit eating sugar. It's not like you never eat sugar again, right? If you're like, I'm going to be healthy now and work out, it doesn't mean you're never going to miss a workout again. And sometimes we hold people to really crazy high standards that doesn't make sense. Right? We want them to never, ever oscillate. We want them to never, ever fall back. The other way we know signs of change is, are we trying to change? Are we trying to make a difference? Right? Are we willing to change as well? Are we able to do the same work that we're expecting this person to do? Are we willing to do that same work for ourselves and for this relationship? A lot of the time, it's really easy to point out where everyone else needs to change. But it's really hard to be conscious of where we need to change. And I think for a lot of us, we're trying to mold someone into being more like us. We want them to think like us. We want them to talk like us. Now, there may be certain value to that. Like you may have some really great skills and you may have some really great attributes. But are you willing to change to some of their better attributes? Are you aware of their better attributes? Are you able to identify their better attributes? Or have you lost connection with them? There's a lot to be said for community and change. I find that if you're the only person reminding this person of the positive benefits of change, it's hard to change. We often need, when we hear that phrase of we are the 5 people we spend the most time with, it's so true that someone will not change unless the people around them change. I've met so many people over the years who are part of a community who thinks in a very old-fashioned way. They're not going to suddenly upgrade to a modern way of thinking. I'll give an example. Like in my Indian community back at home, it's not normal for a husband and wife to travel separately so often. So me and Radhi travel separately a lot. And sometimes I'm at an event and she's not. Sometimes she's at an event and I'm not. And people will always be like, is everything okay? Because in that world, even if you're arguing in the car before you pull up to the wedding event, even if you argue on the way home from the birthday party, because you came and left together, it's seen as positive. Right? Let me just explain that again. People always ask me and Radhi, is everything okay? Because we often don't show up to the same events together because we're both busy. And people would rather argue on the way to a wedding or fight on the way back just to show that they came and left together in order to prove to society that they have a healthy relationship than actually having a healthy relationship. And so the perception in that society is togetherness, i.e. arriving and leaving together, is the sign of a healthy relationship. Now that perception doesn't change overnight. That's a deep-seated belief, as ridiculous as it sounds, that that is what a successful relationship is. And so people live up to that falsehood and people live up to that fake level of quality of a relationship rather than one with good communication and respect and boundaries